have a philosophy about grunge. Like, I think that it was
Okay.
inevitable. You had the boomers who grew up on 50s music and they evolved it into kind of big rock like The Who and Led Zeppelin. And then you had the Gen X kids. We grew up with the Beatles and The Who and Led Zeppelin, and we grew up with punk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was inevitable that we were going to take parts of those things and put them together.
Today on the show, we have a special guest. We are joined by Geoff Turner. Geoff lives in BC and he has worked as a producer for CBC since 2010. And for our listeners from outside of Canada, CBC is the Canadian public broadcaster for both radio and television. You can listen to Geoff's CBC podcast on drugs, where he explores how the use of drugs has shaped our world. Geoff also has his own band, Dear Vandal, and you can find their music on YouTube and Spotify. Welcome to the show, Geoff.
Thanks, Sarah.
So, just to give our listeners a little bit of a context, Geoff and I met back in 2009 when we attended what's now known as Western University together for journalism school. And I remember Geoff, not in an insulting way. You were a lot older than the rest of us.
The world's oldest journalism student, I think.
Well, I don't know if you were the world's oldest journalism student, but you were the oldest person in our class. But what was really cool is because you were older, you lived through the era of music that I love and Sarah loves as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't remember, the sad thing is I don't remember when we actually went to school together. I don't remember us talking about music. But then maybe you have, I mean, this is, oh my goodness, going back 16 years ago. I don't know if you have any memories of us talking about music.
I think we missed an opportunity there. If only I'd known, we would have we
It's
would have been
true.
talking about
No,
nothing else.
it's funny because we reconnected recently. You randomly sent me a message on Facebook Messenger because I was selling all my stuff because I'm going through this like huge minimalism phase. But that's for another
It's another
podcast.
podcast. Yeah.
And I don't know. We kind of just reconnected about music because I think I mentioned, oh, my sister and I are doing a podcast. And the little bit that we spoke, I was like, wow, like Geoff knows a lot about music. And I thought, what a cool guy to have on our show just to shoot the breeze about music with.
Well,
So,
I'm glad you asked me, and it's funny that well, it's not funny. I love the title of your show because it's a little reminder, actually, probably of the roots of my love of music, which I always credit to my older sister,
okay.
Oh, that's awesome.
because she's 4 years older than me, and so growing up in the 70s, 4 years is a lot when you're a little kid, as you know.
Definitely.
It
Yeah.
doesn't mean that much once you're ancient like I am now. But 4 years was a huge gap, and of course I totally looked up to my older sister, and she remains one of the coolest people I know. But she was always a little bit ahead of the game with music. And so when we were really little, it was like turning me on to the Beatles, and the Beatles were
Okay.
huge in our house. And of course, they were still a fairly recent band. They'd only, and then the big one I really remember was Led Zeppelin. My sister got into Led
Okay.
Zeppelin, and I remember the posters on her wall and just thinking like there could be nothing cooler in the world than Jimmy Page with those silk dragon pants and that Gibson Les Paul.
Yeah.
And then she was into new wave and punk stuff. And so I really credit my sister with exposing me to that stuff. And so I absolutely agree that girls like to rock too.
That's awesome. I love that you say that. It's funny because Sarah and I, it's kind of similar now. I know you said girls like rock too. For us, it was our brother, but
Yeah.
our brother was 6 years older than Sarah, or is 6 years older than Sarah, and 8 years older than me. And we often talk on the show about how he really introduced us to music. For us, it was Britpop. He really introduced
Yeah.
us to 90s Britpop. So it's a special thing, eh, to have an older sibling get you into this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's so true for so many people that it's kind of the perfect point of entry. You hear it coming from the next
Yeah,
bedroom or whatever. It's like, what is that
exactly.
sound? That's amazing.
Yeah, and it just kind of gets you ahead of the kids that don't have the older siblings into the music. Like
Yeah,
you're just
yeah,
like
no,
into
definitely.
the cool music for you, like Led Zeppelin, Us, Oasis.
Yep, no, for sure.
Yeah. So you mentioned your sister getting you into music. Is there like a definitive band or album that kind of made you personally get into like your own musical tastes?
It's really hard to pinpoint, you know, like I think like this is sort of embarrassing, but because
There's no shame on this show.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's not it wouldn't be perfectly obvious, but I think probably the music that I heard earliest that made me really feel something about music was probably Cat Stevens. Um,
Okay.
just I remember poring over those albums and looking at pictures of the band members, and I loved it. I still love his voice. It's not at all the style of music that I play or that I listen to a lot of now, but his voice is really incredible. Um, and then I think probably the really transformative thing is like a lot of kids in the late 70s, early 80s, I went through a big punk phase
Of
where
course.
yeah,
Okay.
I was exposed, and Vancouver had a really vibrant scene. Like for what was, especially then, still a relatively small city, we had a really vibrant scene here. There were bands, DOA, who exist to this day,
Okay.
the Subhumans, Pointed Sticks, the Dish Rags. Like there was a scene here, and the the amazing thing about the punk scene at that time is it was so DIY and so local that it felt really accessible. Like you could you could go see a band who you absolutely idolize, like DOA, for example, and then you'd see them, the band members at a record store that weekend
Yeah.
or something. So it seemed like it made it seem like that's something I could actually do. Right. Whereas
Yeah.
looking at Led Zeppelin or those bands, it's like they exist in the stratosphere. I don't, you know, like
yeah.
it's like I don't even know what that place is, how to get there. But punk made it all seem accessible. And then,
That
oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say it's so interesting that you mentioned punk and in BC because I've talked to Sarah. I want to do an episode on Canadian punk music because I find punk often people talk about New York with CBGB and with SoCal, you know, all the bands from down there. But there's something to be said about Canadian punk.
Oh, absolutely. Like
Yeah.
if you there was a great documentary that Iggy Pop hosted that's sort of about the history of punk, and there's an episode that talks about the explosion of the hardcore scene in North America.
Okay.
And all those guys, Black Flag and all of them, they pay all the credit to DOA for really creating the path for touring around North America because they created basically a Bible of names and numbers of people. Because again, it's so DIY. You don't have a big rock and roll manager and a big tour
Yeah,
scheduled.
yeah.
You're phoning people and saying, "Hey, can we sleep on your couch and
Yeah.
play a gig in your town?" And they literally created a Bible that they shared with all the other punk bands. So there was kind of this network of places that you could play, and that's all down to them just saying, "Hey, nobody's going to do this for us. We've got to do it."
Yeah.
And in that documentary, you see like Henry Rollins giving them credit for what they did, like almost literally blazing trails for how to do that.
Yeah, I think that's so cool. I didn't So when I was thinking about Canadian punk, I originally thought of more recent bands like Sum 41 and Gob, Simple
Yeah.
Plan. See, you were talking about embarrassing. I mentioned Simple Plan, although not to knock Simple Plan. I don't mind them, but I didn't realize there's these like grandfathers of punk from
Yeah.
Canada, and I think that's really cool too.
Yeah, and if you talk to any of those guys in Simple Plan or Sum 41 or Gob especially, I guarantee you they will name drop DOA
Yeah.
and the Pointed Sticks and the Subhumans and the bands that came before them. You know, that
Yeah.
punk wasn't ready then to reach a mass audience,
Hmm.
Right.
but all of those bands sort of reaped the benefits of what those earlier bands did.
Yeah. So did you go to a lot of these punk shows when you were growing up in BC?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it was like
Yeah.
that was the other amazing thing is a lot of the shows were all ages shows because
Oh,
they'd
cool.
happen at a community hall or
Oh.
there was a whole network of underground booze cans where it was all ages, but they were selling booze. So it was kind of this, wasn't it? I won't even say it was a gray area. It was totally illegal. But
Well,
these amazing
it was a
shows, you know,
different time.
you'd pay $5 and see six bands, and it would end at 2 o'clock in the morning in some dingy warehouse in East Vancouver.
Yeah. I always sound like that cliche older person, like, oh, back in the old days. But it's just so cool that for $5, I know this
Yeah.
was years ago, so $5 was more than it is now. But still, it was just cool. You could see six bands for
Oh, yeah.
just one ticket price.
Yeah. Like you were saying, accessible, right?
Yeah.
Especially for young people,
Yeah.
which is so cool.
Yeah. Now
Yeah,
you have to
it
like
was very
pay.
youth oriented.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Youth oriented.
Yeah.
I think that's why people love punk rock because it was all about the kids and the teenagers, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So you said you liked punk rock. And then when we caught up after not really being much in touch over the years, we started talking about Sonic Youth. So when did you start getting into, I don't know, I apologize, like what term do you use to describe Sonic Youth? Like are they not new age, but
Well, they're funny because I think they definitely had a connection to the punk scene. Um, I think what happened is that um, punk sort of created this like I really outgrew punk music in a sense. Like you know, some of it I still love and I'll occasionally put on, but it's not. It is kind of to me, it is really young music. You know,
oh,
like I
definitely.
don't.
There's some no effects songs I can't listen to.
Yeah, it's like I feel like, you know, that's great when you're 15 or 16
Yeah.
and you're having a tantrum. It's it's
Yeah.
it suits that, but I kind of outgrew it. But I think what punk did is that do it yourself aesthetic and saying like rock and roll can be a lot of different things. It doesn't have
Yeah.
to fit what's on commercial radio. And I think a lot of people took that and started to branch out in different directions. So, you know, a band like The Replacements,
Yeah.
who they're not really they started kind of as a punk band, but they always also had a connection to sort of more classic singer-songwriter and rock, like the Stones. You hear the influence of the Stones and even
Yeah.
Kiss in
Yeah.
their music, but they weren't doing a slick version of it. They were like, we still play in basements. And
Yeah.
I think Sonic Youth kind of picked up in that same way. Like they were a lot artier, I think, than the typical punk band. They
Yeah.
did a lot
For
of
sure.
they did kind of weirder stuff. Um they tuned their guitars in unusual ways to produce weird sounds. Their song structures are more experimental, at least in their early days. But they
Yeah.
were on SST Records, which was owned by Greg Ginn from Black Flag. And so they were definitely connected to that punk world, but they were taking it in a more progressive and experimental direction. And that really appealed to me.
Yeah.
Is like it's like, okay, I've outgrown punk, but I still want some of that spice. Where, you know,
Yeah.
where do I get it? And then you started to get it from bands like Sonic Youth or Husker Du. Um,
Yeah. Husker Du, that's another band that I haven't listened a lot to, but I want to branch out and listen to more of their stuff. And Sonic Youth. So Sarah and I did an episode about badass female bassists.
Yeah. So of course, Kim Gordon.
Of course, we did an honorable mention of Kim Gordon. We
the
talked a lot
Kims.
about her.
We did.
But then I also made a point to say, oh, I don't really know a lot of Sonic Youth music. I just think Kim Gordon's really cool, which, of course, rightfully so. Some people commented, like, why don't you listen to Sonic Youth then? So we wanted to ask you. Obviously, you're a big fan. You know a lot about them. You've seen them live, which is really cool. Back in the day when Nirvana opened for them. Do you have some, like, for a beginner for Sonic Youth like Sarah and I, do you have a recommendation of an album we should first dive into?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think probably the natural point of entry for a lot of people would be Goo, which was
Okay.
their first major label record. They kind of benefited with there was this explosion of alternative rock, like the first couple of Lollapaloozas were happening, and
Right.
the big record companies went into a feeding frenzy when they realized, hey, we can make money from these weirdos, and they
Yeah.
started signing all these bands. And
Yeah.
Sonic Youth was kind of one of the first of them. To Husker Du was a little before them, but they got signed to Geffen Records and they put out Goo, which is it's probably a good place to start because it's a little more
Okay.
accessible than their earlier records. And so you can start there and work backwards, or you can go forwards. And I think Goo is probably the most accessible. It's got the songs they have that are closest to radio hits like Cool Thing and Dirty Boots. And it's an amazing record. It's
Yeah.
still totally Sonic Youth, but it's not quite as like the records before that are a little more challenging. There'll be stretches where there's like flat out noise, and
Okay.
um, so Goo is great.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm gonna put that on my
Yeah, thanks for the tip.
I'm gonna
All
put
right.
that on my next
Start with
playlist.
Goo.
Cause
Yeah.
yeah, I do I want to get into Sonic Youth. And the funny thing is, back in university, I downloaded Daydream Nation. Or no, sorry, not even the band, the whole album. I just downloaded Teenage Riot.
Oh, killer song.
I listened to it to get pumped for this episode of our podcast. I listened to it on the way here,
Oh.
and that is a good song. So I don't know what's wrong with me. Like, why have I not listened to more? Because
Yeah, no, I know what you mean.
that's just I don't know. I can't even describe that song. It's just a cool sounding song.
Yeah, and there's something about the lyrics of that song too. It's I think it's kind of a tribute to the underground music scene if you listen
Yeah,
to the lyrics, and
that
it
makes
it
sense.
really kind of has that energy of kind of the exuberance
Hmm.
uh of of what punk made possible, like
Yeah,
of uh and I just love that about it.
yeah. No, it's honestly one of my favorite songs, which makes me just yeah. I need to just listen to Sonic Youth. Let's just say it.
Yeah, me too.
So when you saw them live, what era would that have been? Like what album were they promoting a particular album?
Yeah, so this is controversial because I told
Oh,
you that I'd seen them at the York Theater and
okay.
with Nirvana, and
Yeah.
I I wanted to check in about some details of that, and a friend of mine
Okay.
disputes that I was there.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
he insisted
So,
that I decided not to go to that show. If I didn't go to that show, then weirdly I saw them a year later, which was 1991,
okay.
Okay.
opening for Neil Young.
Oh,
Wow.
funny. We have our Neil Young
I
record up
noticed
here.
that. Yeah.
Did you? Yeah, Harvest Moon.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's so
Yeah,
cool.
and credit to Neil Young. Like he's often referred to as the godfather of grunge, but he
Okay.
totally respected Sonic Youth and dug what they were doing and got them on that tour, which was they were touring Goo, which was still relatively new at the time. And it was hilarious because I totally remember most of the crowd, which would have been all the old boomer Neil Young fans, like heading for the refreshment stands during the Sonic Youth set, right? Because it was like, we don't
Yeah.
want to listen to this bullshit. Like,
Yeah.
um, but they were amazing. So was Neil Young, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny. I kind of had the opposite situation where my friend and I went to see Weezer back in this would have been 2005, and we didn't realize like it was Weezer and the Pixies. We didn't realize really how everyone was there to see the
Oh,
Pixies.
I remember you mentioning that. Yes.
So
yeah.
here's me and my friend and our two other friends, like these 17-year-old girls that are like, yeah, Weezer. And everyone's like out, getting their beer and walking around during the Weezer set. And then the Pixies come on and just everybody
Yeah.
comes. So I was like, okay, I guess these guys are bigger than I thought. My 17-year-old self. Oh, man. But no, so it's just funny. It's funny how sometimes that happens when you go to concerts like that.
Totally.
So you did see Nirvana then.
yes, but at a different show.
Okay. It's still cool though.
Yeah. It was weird though. And again, they were opening for the Screaming Trees at the Commodore Ballroom. And same thing. I already had Bleach at that point.
Okay.
Nevermind wasn't even out yet.
Yeah.
But we were there to see the Screaming Trees for sure. It was like
Yeah.
they were the band for us at that moment. And I loved Bleach. I had that album and loved it, but it was like,
Yeah.
no, we want to see Mark Lanigan and the Screaming Trees. And honestly, I don't remember a lot about the Nirvana show. Nevermind was just about to come out.
Okay.
But there were a lot of bands on the bill. It was 4 bands, I think. I know my
Okay.
friend's band, a guy who I was eventually in a band with, opened as well.
Oh, neat.
Cool.
But yeah, I remember the Screaming Trees for sure. I don't know that Nirvana made a huge impression on me that night, which is, I hope that's not deflating to anybody.
No, I think you're just being honest. Yeah. Did you find like growing up in BC and then the grunge era just exploded, which wasn't too far from you, right? Like, was there kind of a grunge scene in BC? Did you find growing up?
That's a it's interesting you ask that because there was a band, one of the greatest bands that ever came out of Vancouver called Slow.
Okay.
And I went to school with their singer and I wound up in my first band because of them. We shared a practice space with them. And I would say that Slow, I don't know if it's accurate to call it grunge. I have a philosophy about grunge. Like I think that it was
Okay.
inevitable. It was whether it was gonna happen in Seattle or it was gonna happen somewhere else. I think it was inevitable because what grunge was to me is it's you had the boomers who grew up on 50s music and they evolved it into kind of big rock like The Who and Led Zeppelin
Yeah.
and all that stuff. And then you had the Gen X kids, my generation. We grew up with the Beatles and The Who and Led Zeppelin, and we grew up with punk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was inevitable that we were going to take parts of those things and put them together. And that to me is what grunge is. It's like, hey, I love Black Sabbath, I love Led Zeppelin, but I also love the Buzzcocks. What
Yeah.
happens when I mix those things together? And that to me is what certainly what Nirvana was. I think Pearl Jam is maybe Pearl Jam and Soundgarden have bits of that. They lean more to the rock side, and Nirvana
Yeah.
leans more to the punk side.
Yeah.
But so I think it was actually answer your question. I think it was happening here to some extent.
Okay.
Slow had that. Like, for example, they'd come out and do a Alice Cooper cover, but then they'd rip into their own songs that were like definitely more on the punk side of things.
Yeah.
So I think we had it happening here, but it was probably happening in Toronto. It was probably happening in LA. It was happening all over the place.
Yeah.
Just
I think grunge kind of took over everywhere.
Yeah,
I
for
just
sure.
I just picture though like downtown Vancouver in 1992 and like everyone's trying to be I mean you would know more. You actually grew up there, but everyone's trying to be Chris Cornell and Eddie Vedder which I mean, I
Yeah,
love
and
personality better. I don't think it's a bad thing, but
I think we had really like there were similar things at work. I think maybe one thing that distinguishes Seattle and that we had too is it rains a lot here. Like
hmm
winters are really dreary, and I think that's partly why the grunge sound is what it is.
yeah,
Oh
Is
yeah.
that it's it reflects a lot. A lot of that music is pretty gloomy,
yeah,
It's dark themes, dark music, and I think it's just kind of it seems really obvious, but I think it actually is a bit of a reflection uh of the atmosphere here.
yeah. No, I can see
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. That's
Yeah,
a really cool
I
description.
I've only been to Vancouver once. I went in 2013 in January. I loved it. I thought it was
Yeah.
awesome. And I just remember on the plane ride home, maybe this sounds really dumb, but just listening to like Pearl Jam on repeat.
Yeah.
I just had the urge to listen to grunge music after being there.
Yeah, see, January, you probably got a little bit of rain and fog while you're here.
Yeah. But it was nice though. I remember just being in kind of a light jacket, whereas back home I
Oh
would have had to
gosh,
have been in like
January.
in Southwestern Ontario, January, you gotta wear a parka and
Yeah,
really
totally.
bundle up. So let's kind of jump ahead then to your current band, Dear Vandal. And when did you start that? Have you guys been around for a while? Is this more of a recent project?
Um, I think it essentially started as my pandemic project. I
Oh,
was
yes.
like everybody kind of stuck at home and thinking like I got to fill up some time, and I'd been
Yeah.
away from music for a long time, and I just started writing songs, and I sort of decided for myself, okay, well, I've never actually done an album and I want to do an album. And so that was my goal. And so over the course of about 3 years, just alone in my basement, I recorded an album and put it out. So the band kind of happened backwards. Like for 3 years, Dear Vandal was just me. I just
Okay. I was
I
gonna
just
Oh,
ask, is it
cool.
is it like a solo project or do you have members?
it was then, and only I chose a name only because like if I was a music fan, I would never click on something by someone named Geoff Turner. That just sounds boring to me. So I I came up with a name even though it was just me. But then of course
Okay.
the time comes, okay, well I want to play these songs in front of people. And so then
Yeah.
I had to recruit a band. And so now I have a band and we've done a couple of shows, but I had to work. I know it's a little bit ass backwards, but I
Oh,
I started as me, turned it into a band, and now we're an actual band, and we work on songs together.
that's awesome.
Wow, that's so
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, we listened to quite a few of your songs. Sarah put some of your songs on her playlist. And yeah,
Bless
it's
you.
got
That's great. I like I yeah, the indie vibe of it, I
yeah.
suppose. Some elements of well, everything that you've been talking about today, especially like the 80s new wave kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
that when I first listened to your band, I said to Sarah, I said, Sarah, I really think you dig these guys because
Yeah.
Sarah's totally into that 80s like New Order and
Yeah, I'm all over it. Yeah, no,
yeah.
it's great.
Yeah. Like what would you say, Jeff, is your biggest influences for your band?
Oh, that's tricky. It's funny hearing from other people what they hear.
Okay. Because you're
Because
like, no way, I
sometimes
don't sound like New Order.
yes, no, I no, absolutely. I bet I know exactly the song you mean that made you think that. Um, because there are things about that time that and that style of recording that I love, and I definitely wanted to capture the essence of. But again, it's like it becomes your own little stew, right? Where
Yeah,
you're,
yeah, for sure.
I grew up with those influences and and how they come together and how they mix. That's I guess what makes it special to you. But yeah, so 80s stuff for sure. I think there's a band called Galaxy 500 that it has hugely influenced me. Um, Velvet Underground for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um,
Another one.
that's a you you scratch at any Gen X musician, inevitably you're going to get to the Velvet Underground,
Nice.
because they're just. I think for a lot of people, they're kind of the alternative Beatles,
Yeah,
like
I could see that.
where they never had the commercial success that the Beatles did, but their influence is just absolutely massive on certainly all the people that I grew up with. Um, but I'm trying to keep a bit more current too. There's a band from Vancouver called Destroyer who I absolutely adore. They've been around for um, more than 30 years and they put out tons of
Okay.
records. They're amazing. I love Animal Collective. I love a lot of the pop stuff that you guys are into. I'm crazy for Pulp, especially.
Oh,
They're
Pulp.
Nice. Oh,
Yeah.
they're my favorite of that
Oh,
generation.
nice. Yeah. Yeah, they're
Um,
great.
but yeah, television is huge for me. Um, I love the guitar sounds on that. I love Feist.
oh,
Um,
Oh,
nice.
Feist. Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
Very
that's
Canadian.
probably my favorite concert of the last 10 years. I saw Feist at the Commodore Ballroom, and she just absolutely knocked our socks off. Just
Oh, nice.
Cool.
incredible performer.
Do you still go to a lot of live music nowadays? Like a lot of live shows?
I don't go to as much as I should. I feel guilty, especially because I'm always like, you do a show and you're begging your friends to come out and see your own band, and then it's like, oh, I'm too tired to go out.
Yeah, well, that's life.
um, but yeah, I'm trying to get to more independent music. It's
Yeah.
hard because I know, like, I totally get how your inclination is to you want to go and see the bands that you know you're going to love, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
if I go and see Pulp or I these big bands, I know I'm going to have an amazing time. You're taking more of a
It's
Yeah.
given.
gamble when
Yeah.
you're going out to catch local independent acts, but they really need you. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sarah, that's kind of a or a sore spot for Sarah because you were going to go see Pulp, weren't you?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Just with work and like you're saying, just kind of tired.
It,
I didn't, but definitely had some concert FOMO on that one.
yeah.
at least you had a
Yeah.
chance. They didn't even come here on that tour, and I was really heartbroken. I've never seen
Oh,
them.
they didn't go
Yeah.
that out
I
west?
was talking
No.
about that
Mm-mm.
with a coworker. Like, we're fairly lucky in Toronto because if they go to one place in Canada,
It's
it's usually
typically
Toronto.
around
Although a
here.
lot do go to Vancouver, but Toronto is like
The
the
main
main spot.
spot. Yeah.
Yeah.
Location wise, I
So
guess,
yeah,
because then you could just go down
makes
into the,
sense. Yeah.
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 Yeah, I don't have the statistical evidence, but everybody seems to agree that, like, Vancouver used to be the same way. Often bands would start their tours here
Okay.
or
Oh,
end their
interesting.
tour here, and it seems to be getting dropped off of tours now. I think
Yeah.
I don't exactly know why, but it's maddening.
It is. It's
Yeah, for sure.
disappointing
For
for all
sure.
of you guys living out in the West Coast. And it's a shame for these bands. I mean, the West Coast is a beautiful spot to visit. So,
And a lot of well, like you were talking, a thriving music community, you
yeah.
would think like they would do well there, but
Yeah.
and you just come up, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I think we're kind of weird geographically in that it's like we're 3 hours from Seattle,
Yeah.
8 hour like on by bus, by tour bus, 10 hours from Calgary. It's like I think we're kind of in a
Yeah.
wonky spot. They
Yeah.
used to think it was worth it. Maybe not so much anymore.
Wow. Maybe they'll listen to this podcast, Jeff, and will influence
Yeah, there you go, eh?
influence what is it,
Yeah.
Jarvis Cocker
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
come to
Go all the
Please,
way
go back
back.
to
Jarvis.
Vancouver. Yeah. Random question, do you ever listen to Suede? Because we talk about Suede quite a bit on our podcast.
Yeah, I not as much as I should. I know that it- it's a flavor that I haven't quite taken to. There's some songs of theirs that I really dig, and I've never honestly given them a super deep dive. I know that the people who love Suede really love Suede.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you saying flavor, and we've talked about this. It's a unique flavor, suede. it's not for everyone. So that's fair. Yeah.
It's not for everyone, but I find the people that do enjoy the flavor like really,
Really.
really soak it all in.
Yeah. Oh,
Which
for
I
sure.
love.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. The people that love it really love it.
Yeah,
So Jeff,
he's like a super like his style of vocal delivery
that's what I've
is
mentioned.
so theatrical. And
Oh yeah.
I think if you're not on board with that, it can be a bit like but I dig it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
was gonna say, Jeff, you need to check out more Suede, and then Sarah and I need to check out more Sonic Youth, and
Yeah. Give a
we'll
listen
take
for
notes.
sure.
And
Yeah.
Sarah, what Suede album should Jeff listen to? He gave us "Goo" by Sonic Youth. What?
Oh, that's a good question. I guess like in terms of accessible coming up, but their debut album, and that's like Brett Anderson with his unique singing style. It's amazing. But coming up would be your like a little bit more poppy, I guess.
A little bit more
Yeah.
safe.
A safer bet. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna take that to heart.
Just get into it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now,
Well,
did I see that one or both of you went to the Buzzcocks?
that was just Sarah.
Oh,
Unfortunately,
yeah.
I didn't get to go. Sarah went.
Well, it was a Friday night, and I was in Toronto for work. And so I thought, oh, I know a few of their songs and decided to go. And yeah, it was great. I had a really good time.
That's a great
Yeah.
venue, the Opera House.
It
Oh, the
is.
Opera
I
House.
haven't been there. I saw Death from Above like 20 years ago there.
Oh, lucky. That would be a
Yeah,
great show.
that was cool. Yeah. And it's been a while. It's kind of like out there, but yeah, it was great. Yeah, like as you mentioned, a really cool venue, a bit smaller because I've been going to like bigger shows, just bigger bands.
Yeah.
So this was like a bit smaller, although the capacity I think is still like 600. So it wasn't like tiny.
No,
But yeah, it was
that's the
great.
ideal for me. It's like it's big enough
It's
to feel
good.
like, oh, we've
Yeah.
got critical mass here, but still small enough that you can you might catch a bit of the bassist sweat on your chin or something.
Yeah, exactly. It's a good size. Yeah, it takes me back to my 20s when
When we used to go to
see more
shows.
shows. But
Yeah. We used to
yeah,
go
it
to
was good.
Phoenix a lot. Was it
Oh
Phoenix?
gosh, the Phoenix.
That's not there
Yeah.
anymore. So I like that Opera House is
Uh,
still there.
I think the Phoenix is still there.
Is it?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
There's a few venues that they've
Yeah,
shut
it's
down.
different. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
The Buzzcocks guys must be ancient now.
Well, the one, it's the one. Yeah. He's like 71. What's his name again? I forget. But he's like from the original, and I have to say, he was pretty like. I was impressed. Like,
Yeah?
he looked great
He
up
still
there.
got it for
He's still
an older
got it.
gentleman?
Although the Buzzcocks, I mean, this wasn't his first show, right? Like,
Yeah.
he's been
Yeah,
doing it for, like,
that's a pretty
50
well-oiled
years.
machine by now.
Yeah, it definitely was. The flow was great. Yeah, it was really good. I just thought, oh, let's go see. Like it, I was a bit starstruck because I don't know, like I don't know. Yeah, something about the Buzzcocks I always liked maybe a bit more than the Pistols, dare I say it? I don't know, just something about them.
I say it from the hilltops, sister. That's
I don't know if that's a bit, yeah.
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 I
So
think
I
I think they were probably the better band when all is said and done. It's more enduring music. I'm way more likely to put on the Buzzcocks than I am the Sex Pistols now. Even though they're probably more responsible for creating genres of punk that I'm not as into, the sort of pop punk stuff. But I just their songs are funny and clever and upbeat.
Yeah, a little bit more melodic, which is what I like, and I guess just with the Manchester music scene, and that's what like we're big fans of Oasis and stuff. So you can hear all that, and a lot of that stems from the Buzzcocks. So
Yeah.
maybe there's that too.
Totally.
Yeah, it was very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the original Buzzcocks, Howard Devoto, formed a band called. He left the Buzzcocks and started a band called Magazine that I really love. Like they're a big influence on me. They were sort of that's the beginning of post punk,
Yeah.
where it's kind of again, it's like the bands are kind of growing out of punk. They're
Yeah.
taking the energy of it, but taking a more arty direction. I really love that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm sad I missed it, but
Yeah, it was really cool. I'm
yeah,
glad I
it was
went.
kind of a last
Yeah,
minute decision on Sarah's part, and
exactly. Like you said, I'm old now, and I'm like, oh, I gotta
I
drive
didn't say
home.
that.
But I was like, oh, I'm gonna do it, and I'm glad I did it.
yeah. Good
I
for
said
you.
yeah.
But you did say Sarah did make a point to mention you were like the youngest person there.
Yeah. I felt. Well, I was telling Katie, I'm like, I kind of feel young and hot right now.
Sarah, you
Buzzcocks
are young and hot
concert.
right now.
It's all relative, right? I'm like, I'm feeling pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No.
all the decrepit old Gen Xers.
Yeah.
Oh no. I think
Oh, they were like, some people were definitely well into their 60s, but I mean, the Buzzcocks have been,
they've been around for a while.
oh my gosh, I think the mid 70s. If you were like really into more indies type stuff, they've been around forever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kudos to them though for
Yeah. Yeah.
the
Exactly.
main, the main guy for
He
still.
looked great. Yeah.
Love
Well,
that stuff.
thanks so much, Jeff, for
Yeah.
giving us your time and yeah, just having this conversation with you. I just knew I said to Sarah, Jeff went to journalism school with him, and I just know he's gonna have a lot to say about music, and I just knew the conversation would really flow, which it did. So I thank you for that.
Oh, well, thank you guys for having me. It's if there's anything I love to do, it's to yak about music.
Oh, you
That's-
can
well,
come on our show anytime.
come
We
to the right
love talking about
place,
music.
yeah.
I've already learned so much
Yeah.
from talking to you.
We'll have you on for Goo.
Yeah,
special.
that's true. We should have you on for Goo track by track.
I'm down. I'm down.
Awesome.
get your notes ready.
Okay, you get ready. We're gonna message you to do that. I love it. Well, thank you so much, and for everyone listening, please check out Jeff's band, Dear Vandal, on YouTube and Spotify. I know you won't be disappointed.
No.
And yeah, check out his work.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.